Okay, good. Hey everybody, great to see you all here, and thanks for having me. My name's Andy. I think we've had the introduction for me, so I'll just kind of drive right past that. But I've had about 20 years to play around in web and mobile. And for that whole time, I've kind of been a wannabe audiophile. And I say wannabe, people at Dolby cringe when I say that. But I say wannabe because web and mobile kind of is a clash with audiophile too. And until recently, you couldn't put those things together. And I'll get to that in just a minute. But first, let me talk a little bit about Dolby, just because that's what Dolby pays me to do. Dolby, you know, we've kind of cut our teeth on audio. We're not just an audio company, but from the very beginning. A lot of you have probably seen some of our work on tape. Anybody remember noise reduction on cassette? Anyone? Yeah, my man. Anybody else? Okay, good. Let those tapes go. We don't need those anymore. You know, we started on cinematic stereo, we moved up to surround sound, and then as things got to go digital, we went really crazy and went 5.1 and 7.1 and 9.1, and that's all culminated in this thing called Atmos right now. Anybody seen an Atmos movie? Nobody. Well, one. The rest of you have an assignment. You have to go see an Atmos movie. And go see a movie, you got a year, come back next year and we'll talk about it. They're building a new Dolby Cinema here in town called the Mukunda Theater that has Dolby Atmos for audio, and it has Dolby Vision for cinema, which I'll talk about in a minute. But Atmos is the new version of surround sound where we break away from channels, and instead we treat audio as an object. So we can fly things around the room. There's no snapping from speaker to speaker to speaker. We can actually fly a helicopter around the room. And if you're ever in San Francisco, give me a call. I'll come put you in a sound room, turn on a rainstorm, and we'll just see how long it takes before you do one of these things because you think it's real. It's pretty cool. But audio is pretty much a lot of what we do, and that's probably where you know us. But we do things like Dolby Vision too, better pixels, brighter pictures, more color saturation. You'll see that in that Mukunda Theater as well. We build them into these things that are the Dolby Theater, which is down on the bottom there with the sexy blue lights and stuff. Again, those are coming out everywhere. If you get a chance, go see a movie in one of these theaters. It's just amazing. And finally, you know, one of those places that you wouldn't expect to see us is on a conference phone, of all things. If somebody sends you a conference request to talk to them on Blue Jeans or BT Meet Me or West or some of the other technologies that we support, download the app, go to the conference call in that. It's amazing the difference you'll hear. It's like you're sitting in the room with other people. But I digress because really, audio is still a massive part of what Dolby is. You know, that is a really blurry slide. Good job, Andy. You know, we really like to put you in a room about this big and shove a lot of speakers in there and turn them up really loud and crank up the bass and get a lot of wow out of you. That takes a lot of setup time and it takes a lot of lifting and it kind of hurts when you're done with it. But we're very good at audio and that's really central to what we do. And so I'm kind of lucky because being a web and a mobile guy, I'm actually allowed to go play around in some of the best audio and cinema rooms in the world at Dolby. And that's kind of a humble brag. Actually, that's just a brag. There's no humble there. But you know, once you've heard that difference in audio, once you've heard a difference between that flat MP3 AAC stuff that we were all so enamored with when they were free about 10 years ago to fully immersive room-filling soundscape audio, it's hard to go back. It's like taking your HD or your 4K television and throwing it away and going and getting that CRT that weighed 400 pounds and putting it back on your desk and going to that. It's just not satisfying. Really, we do HD for your ears. So, the thing is, as much as I love those huge audiophile rooms at Dolby, that's just not a context we can all live in. I mean, I can't drag that here. I can't drag that anywhere. I have to go to work to enjoy that. My wife won't let me have that. So, no. You know, that's rooted. I have to go to it, and that's why we pay so much to go to these theaters like the Mukunda, because somebody else will do things like tune the room and push all the speakers into place and spend all the money for all that stuff. We just buy the popcorn and watch the movie, and that's the good part, right? You know, I think a lot of us live in the same world where we get a lot of our content from one or two different places, and that's in the app and in the browser. And I know that, I don't know, show of hands, how many people have watched a movie in an app in the past month? Pretty decent showing. How about in the browser? Like maybe a Netflix session? I expected a lot more hands there, but I think you're being bashful. You know, in these modes, user experience is absolutely everything, because if I take you to Dolby in San Francisco, you'll patiently and politely wait for me to juggle remotes and fiddle with the lights and get things to work just right. But if I take me out of the picture and I take the kindness of the in-person experience out of the picture and I give you an app and you turn it on, in a second you start to drift away unless that starts to hook you. You have 1 second. That's according to Jacob Nielsen, by the way, who's that king of UX and user experience. And so, in that 1 second, I would say that audio can really, really help you grab people. It can really get you in front quickly. It's a crucial second. You may as well use everything you have. And so, cards on the table here. My goal is really to convince you to build websites and mobile apps using Dolby Audio and deliver a better user experience, and we'll call that the audio user experience. Dolby can't really turn noise into gold. We do have the features and the abilities to deliver a full mix when you go out and you spend a little bit of time on building an audio user experience. We have the tools that can deliver that to your users. But I get ahead of myself again. Because really, I need to start back at that ignored sense, and that's the sense of hearing. Because really, Dolby's not just the only company that's big on audio. Audio is a big part of who we all are. And by the way, I love this baby picture. It's once again blurry, but it's kind of cute. We develop a really close relationship with sound very early in our lives. So our hearing develops at about 5 months. Our sight develops about 5 months after birth. So, we're able to actually hear in the womb. We're actually able to differentiate between voices, between people we know, between things we know and things we don't know in the womb. There's studies that show fetuses turn their heads in relation to new input from sound. So really, we learn to trust our ears way before we learn to trust our eyes, and yet UX is pretty much focused on what you see, right? On the colors, on the shapes, on the order that you see things, and on the way you see them, and we leave the ears off. And I'm not saying you shouldn't pay attention to the traditional UX stuff. You have to. You don't have a choice. And I'm also not saying that audio is underrepresentation and apps and mobile is anybody's fault in here. It's not. It's not a sermon. It's not your fault. You haven't been given the tools, and you haven't had the ways to deliver these things. The payback hasn't been there. All I'm saying right now is that audio belongs front and center in your UX work, and it's just as important as the visuals. And so, I have somebody tell me this at every single show, and that is, yeah, Andy, sure. Everybody mutes my audio. And I'd go back and say, really? Did they mute your audio? Because if you go on rush hour and walk around, how many people are wearing headphones on their heads? How many have headphones in your bag right now? I got like 3 pairs in my bag, but I'm paid to have 3 pairs in my bag. I think those are a pretty bold statement. I think those are a statement that people prefer to have their digital experiences, without distractions and without any dilution at all. They're a method to screen out a lot of the chaos and a lot of the distractions. And they're, a method to preserve the ability to interact one-on-one with the experience you're trying to build. People with headphones are telling you one thing, they want to hear your story, and really they're a method to isolate yourself in the story. And here's a great example. Anybody ever played Limbo? Anyone? You know what I'm about to say, right? Go buy a copy of Limbo on iPad. Don't turn on the audio, mute it. Take your headphones, throw them away, and play the game. It's pretty cool. It's pretty minimalist, it's black and white, just little shapes, it's pretty good. Then plug in your headphones, it's a whole different game. And again, it's minimalist, it's footsteps, it's crows in the backgrounds, it's spooky sounds, but it takes on a whole new, almost horror movie vibe to it that is absolutely habit-forming. You can't help but play this thing to the end, or if you're me, go find all the cheat codes and then play it to the end. But go give that a shot. It adds a whole dimension to the game. And if somebody's muting your audio and they're still using your app, I would say imagine what adding a little bit of engaging audio would do for you as well. I'd imagine it would do something for your attach rates. A couple more examples of some interesting uses of audio, or use cases anyway. Education. You see people like Udemy and Coursera delivering dialogue, pure dialogue, where dialogue is the product. Dialogue's not there, the story breaks, right? I mean, why am I paying for this content if I can't hear what you're trying to tell me? Hands-free content. I used to be a rock climber. That's another bad picture of a sheet bin there. I used to rock climb quite a bit, and I know when I tried to learn how to tie knots, I had to have both hands on it, because one, ain't doing it. So what do? You have to put the iPad down, you have to start tying on a knot, and if you have to go back and forth, I'm not trusting my knot anymore, ergo, I might be falling off a rock. A little dramatic, but you know where I'm going with this. And then, where would I be if I didn't talk about games? And Angry Birds Star Wars is a great example. Excuse. Thanks. They took what was an instantly recognizable theme in the Star Wars theme. Dragged that one out. They layered on a whole bunch of ambient sounds, like the grumbling birds, which is still one of my favorite sound effects because it's kind of creepy when you hear it fully surround sound. They added a bunch of ambient sounds, like the pigs grunting in the background, added some action elements, like things flying across the room and things crashing, and some success and failure noises. And what they have is a soundscape, not just beeps and boops, but they actually have a soundscape that pulls you in. And I think nobody could argue against the fact that that was a pretty profitable game. And a movie, and stuffed toys, and all kinds of other crap that I'm sure your kids asked you to buy. Audio wasn't 100% of that experience, but I do believe that without the audio, that wouldn't have been half the runaway that it was. So then, to me, a mobile effort or a good web effort really ends up being an audio-forward experience. And, that is a neat match to the modality we're trying to cover with web and with mobile, too. It's a way to interact with your user that they don't have to drop everything and pay attention to. They don't have to look at, they can just hear and understand what you're doing. You create a brand, they hear it, they know it. We could play the background music for Angry Birds, half of you would know what it was immediately. We could play any one of the Star Wars clips, you'd know what that was immediately. Audio forward takes us somewhere and it gives you a hook. And what that really gives you is more time in app. It gives you longer ad impressions. It brings you an opportunity for upsells and in-app purchases. And it also gives you better reviews. So, I'll kind of finish off the audio UX bit by appealing to those of you who are building apps and websites and ask you to think about adding to and rounding out your experience with better audio. I'll ask you to bring the user more deeply and more intimately into your story and really use a soundscape instead of just making noise. It's more work, and I know it, and the last thing any of us wants to do is more work right now, but it's really worth it. You can cater to a sense that nobody's really played to all that much so far, and we're here to help. And so really quickly, we are offering Dolby Audio, and it's now on Windows and Apple. So on everything Apple makes from iOS 9.3 forward, there's a decoder for Dolby built in there. And it works the same as any other codec would. You encode and you decode. So the decoder's built in on the devices. The encoder's built in on my website and some of the tools you already have in many other places, and we'll get to that in just a minute. But Microsoft's also done the same thing for Windows 10. So apps on both platforms can take advantage of Dolby Digital Plus, and so can the browsers on the platforms. So some key features that help you bring that mix out: expanded dynamic range, clearer dialogue, bass management, the chance to go with multi-channel mixes, and the capability to intelligently upmix and downmix based on your endpoint. And I'll explain an endpoint in just a minute. So dynamic range, you know about this one, right? It's take 3 pictures, mash them all together, get the lowlights, get the highlights, and get a great photo because you have all the detail. Same thing with audio. If you get expanded dynamic range, you get the chance to do things like subtle sounds in the foreground, like birds tweeting in the trees and trains passing in the distance. Meanwhile, you can have loud in-your-face sounds like system alerts, like asteroids crashing to Earth or things like that. And then some things need to be in the background to create a context, like set a location like a beach or a forest with some of the light ambiance that would happen there, or to create a mood, like tension created or tension resolved, or to define characters and inform some of their past or their backstory without ever having to write a word or issue any dialogue about it. Audio can help with all 3 of those things, and if you layer those in a soundscape, you can do it very effectively and very efficiently, too. At the very minimum, you want to avoid this loudness where everything's screaming to be heard on the screen, because that's just going to get you shut off, and that's no good whatsoever. But I'd transition to dialogue really quickly and just say this. If you have dialogue on the screen, if you have dialogue delivering anything in your story, that is the most important thing you have, and I think that's a full stop period there. If you have somebody talking, you're delivering something via vocal, that has to be heard. And again, if you don't hear the vocals, if you don't hear the dialogue, your story breaks. So dialogue enhancement is a pretty important bit that needs to be crystal clear over device speakers, over headphones, or if you plug into a larger sound system. Dolby Digital Plus helps put dialogue where it belongs in all those endpoints. So, let's see, bass management. I think who doesn't love the bass, right? I mean, you can't recreate a lot of the elements in a good soundscape without good, deep bass. But of course, bass management is more than just shoving everything into a subwoofer, right? I mean, yeah, taking all the low frequencies from all channels and shoving them into a subwoofer, that's important. But what if there is no subwoofer, i.e. this laptop or my iPad out front? Bass management also subtracts some of that bass and moves it around to the speakers that are capable of reproducing bass and cuts off some of the frequencies that can distort on smaller speakers. Again, if you just pipe that stuff straight out with an MP3, you're probably going to get a little bit of distortion if you're trying to deliver the full experience to all devices. So having a codec that has the ability to go figure out what's there is a good thing, and that kind of brings us to endpoint detection. So one of our favorite bits is endpoint detection, and I'll take bass as an example here. You know, Dolby Digital Plus will analyze the bass that it has in a clip, and it will shift the production of that bass to match the endpoint environment. That is your headphones, that is your device speakers. If you're using AirPlay, if you're streaming, you can push a deeper bass channel over Bluetooth to play through a subwoofer, but it'll morph to the system you're playing back on, instead of sounding terrible on the system in three systems and sounding great on one. You know, just because a fraction of your users may not hear it doesn't mean nobody should, right? And then surround sound, imagine that the guy from Dolby is talking about surround sound. You know, motion and depth is something that we try to build in all of our stories that we tell anyway, especially in digital experiences, and surround sound can help that where you have it available. Sure, not everybody has this yet, but it's coming up and more people are able to build it for less money. And you know, at the end of the day, the mix really does matter. And it matters because a lot of the iDevices that we see around are being used to really power some of the media experiences we see out there, from personal to massive installations. There's the FITSE conference going on this week in Toronto where it's mostly installation based, and a lot of those guys are using iPads to deliver what they have in surround. There's a lot more devices coming out capable of handling surround sound. And with the growing number of users who are building listening environments like this, you know, wouldn't you love to deliver them that delight when they plug it in and go, oh my God, the whole room's filled with this app and not just the front of the room. It's good stuff. And while that sounds like a lot of effort, if you encode your audio in Dolby Digital Plus, it folds down. So you can build a 7.1, 7.2 mix for a great big giant room, and as it hits different endpoints where it's 5.1, where it's 3.1, where it's 2.1, it's stereo, it's mono, it'll fold down and keep all that information in the speakers that you have. So if you try that with an MP3 encoded in AAC, what happens? Poof, those channels disappear. So if you go from 7 to 5 channels, you lose information there and you lose a part of your story. And if you put the time into building that soundscape and then you drop it, that stinks. So it's a codec capable of delivering your entire story again. So you're sitting there saying, God, this is great, Andy. How do we get started? You're not. Well, so if you're going to get started, it's as easy as encoding your content. Come to the website at developer.dolby.com. You can drag and drop a file in and encode it. I'll give you back an MP4 encoded in Dolby Digital Plus. And really, for the majority of Apple iOS developers, most everybody's using this. You can just encode and go. If you're a web developer, you might have to use a little bit of feature detection. We have a couple of scripts available on GitHub, so you know, come check those out if you're interested in delivering multi-channel or even better audio over the web. We talked about some of the tools, some of the ones you might already have though. The Adobe tool set, they both export, Audition and Premiere both export in Dolby Digital Plus. You might already have those in your desktop. If not, encoding.com allows you to insert encoding more of a workflow perspective. Otherwise, drag and drop again. I told you about the file utility, bottom left there, and then we've built one on Azure as well if you're a Microsoft Cloud user. And for anybody attending this talk, special offer for you, I'm your encoding monkey. If you want your audio encoded, come find me, I'll encode for you here. I've got the tools on this here laptop. So you know, a quick note here, promotion and logos, if you do anything fun with audio, if you're doing any work with Dolby Digital Plus stuff, I want to know about it, I want to make some noise about it, I want to promote this a little bit. I think the time is now. And so if your creativity is being devoted to adding more audio to your app, let's talk. Let's use some logos, let's tell people you care about their ears, and let me make some noise about your app as well. And so my shameless enticement is this. Encode your audio assets and add them to your iOS or tvOS application. Add a little bug in your description saying audio powered by Dolby. Submit those changes and show them to me. Now would, you know, probably not possible because you're probably busy, I'm thinking. But in the next week, next 2 weeks, until I run out of gift cards, I'll give you a gift card for all your work. And I'll do a little bit of promotion on Dolby Developer as well. So with that, I'll come to questions. Any of those? 3, 2, 1. 0, -1. Okay, good, no questions. Then, by all means, if you have any questions, come to me at andrew.vaughan@dolby.com, and don't forget the extra A. Yeah, my parents used that to screw me up for years in grade school. Developer.dolby.com is the website. It has everything you need to know about encoding for all your platforms. And if you don't find it there, contact us, meet us. That comes to me. We're up here in booth 19. Come by and hear the difference if you want to. And a couple of links here, just for things that I referred to: the loudness war and to Jacob Nielsen's 1 second until people start to drift away from your app. So that's what I've got. Let's go have some lunch. What do you say? Lunch. Thanks, guys.